Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 95. I am your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the acclaimed and celebrated comic book writer and artist, Dave Baker.
Hey!
Dave, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me, Barney. I appreciate you referring to me as acclaimed and not criminally obscure. I really appreciate you extending that olive branch, man. You're doing me all kinds of favors.
But you got some great stuff. You've been putting out work for well on almost a decade. I noticed your earlier stuff that you came out with. That was back in 2011. Is around the time we really started.
If not even before that. I mean, I was self-publishing stuff in high school. You know, most of it is, print runs of like 100, where I think like literally the only remaining copies are like the ones that I have. But it's a journey, right? You start small, you start betting on yourself, and slowly over time, when you refuse to give up, everyone in your immediate circle goes, well, I guess he's just gonna keep doing this. We might as well support it, I guess.
And you just recently came out this last end of June, Everyone Is Tulip, which I love. What you did is that you you put it out as a web comic back in end of March.
Yeah.
But then you released the entire book at the end of June. So if people want to read it, it's still a web comic that's still not all out yet. I think you're still on page 70. Some
70 something. Yeah. Basically, right. Nicole and I are Nicole Gu, the artist. The book that we're talking about, Everyone Is Tulip, is illustrated by Nicole Gu and colored by Ellie Hall, written by me. And normally, Nicole and I get the word out about our books by going to conventions and just kind of hand selling them to people. And because, I don't know if you're familiar with this, a little bit of a pandemic, we didn't have that option. So we went to Dark Horse and we were like, hey guys, can we take this into our own hands, and can we self-serialize this? Can we put this out online, try and develop a following? Can we, literally just try and get the word out in every way possible? So we've been doing a lot of interviews on podcasts, such as this great show, bunch of other stuff. We've been self-serializing it. It came out in comic book stores about 2 weeks ago, and yesterday in bookstores everywhere.
Right. That's amazing. And you tell us a little bit about the kind of like the premise, synopsis, the premise.
Yeah, sure. So the book is called Everyone Is Tulip, and it follows a young woman who moves from Arizona to Los Angeles in order to become an actor. She's pursuing a life as a performer. And when she gets here, she realizes, it's not as easy as it looks. So she kind of bombs around LA, working odd jobs until she kind of falls backwards into a position being the face of these kind of performance art videos that this guy, Stanley, is making online. And lo and behold, they start going viral, and it changes her life overnight. She starts becoming kind of sucked up into this world of online performance art. This character, Tulip, that she plays in these videos, kind of becomes this surrogate identity for her. And so the whole book is kind of her navigating those underbellies of the entertainment industry and being presented with questions that are kind of like, how far are you willing to go to get what you want? What compromises are you willing to make along the way? And what is it that your real intentions hold? Like, are you trying to be famous just for famous? Are you trying to be an artist? Are you comfortable with this kind of new version of fame, this kind of rebooted version of online personas dominating our everyday life? It's 168 or 70 something pages long, and it's put out by Dark Horse, and there's going to be a crossover with Hellboy coming this summer.
Really?
No, it's not going to be a crossover with Hellboy.
How is that going to fit? I mean,
No, not at all. I mean, look, Mike Mignola, if you want to chat, let's chat, baby. But no, that's not That's not happening. It's a one and done graphic novel, beginning, middle, and end.
Well, maybe Hellboy put in a Shiver Me Burgers in there back.
Oh man, I would be so excited. I would be so excited. I don't know if you know this, Barney, but Shiver Me Burgers is in everything we do. Like Nicole and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your Easter egg. You throw that in. I saw.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 things that are recurring in all of our books. One of them is Shiver Me Burgers, and then the other main one is there's this like fictional pulp adventure hero called the Lurker. And he's kind of like the Phantom or like Doc Savage, and he's in everything we do too.
Right. I would. I'm not gonna say there's a line in this book that I felt when we said before we went live. Yeah, when I personally attacked about was like the what in the background there was somebody talking about the Redestroyer. There's this.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of how I fanboy out with any MCU movies, and it reminded me of
that. Yeah, basically there's a scene where there's a little boy in the book named Petey, and he's like running around in the backyard playing, and he's basically making up a story that's kind of like a loose adaptation or kind of regurgitation of a movie that he saw. And it's totally that. It's totally just like weirdo comic book tropes that he's kind of like vomiting out while he's got these action figures running around the backyard.
So what I love in a previous interview that you mentioned as well, I mean, you made a slight reference to David Lynch and what I mean, it's like a Lynchian.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, when I read that, I'm a huge fan of David Lynch. And what I liked about this is that once I put 2 and 2 together when I heard you mention like it was like a Lynchian themed in a sense where it had that uneasiness about the entire environment, but you were still engaged in the storyline. Yeah. And that's kind of like that David Lynchian's feel when you mentioned that, but without the supernatural aspects of it.
Yeah. The goal for us, like the tone of the book, was kind of like a mixture of Nicholas Winding Refn's film The Neon Demon, David Lynch, specifically Eraserhead, and Satoshi Kon with his movie Millennium Actress and Perfect Blue. Like those were the 2 Satoshi Kon movies that we were really interested in. And so Nicole and I worked for a long time to try and strike the right balance of what the book would ultimately be. Like in the beginning, when we first started talking about it, we thought it would be a little bit more literally Perfect Blue or literally Millennium Actress, where it would maybe have like surreal dream sequences and kind of not knowing what is reality and what is the digital space. There's another anime called Summer Wars, which is kind of about that, where you literally go into the internet and there's all these kooky characters, and we were thinking maybe it's something like that, but it quickly evolved into this, where it is more, it's an interior book that actually is interior, not an interior book that is then manifested outwardly like, no, they're going into the fucking computer. It's the Matrix. She's surfing the waves of the texts. Yeah, like that. That very quickly was just like, oh yeah, that's not what we're interested in.
Right. Because it's more like it's a journey of kind of like self-discovery and self-actualization, and for both characters, for Paradox, aka Stanley, and also Becca, aka Tulip, in a way. And as obviously not giving away the ending. The ending, I couldn't think of how you could have ended it other than the way you ended it. Like,
oh man, dude, that is like the best compliment. Thank you so much. That is like the best. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because the book itself it's about these people kind of testing their limits, right? It's about, the metaphor is like, as an artist, what are you willing to do to succeed? But it applies to everything, because now everyone is a performer. Everyone has a Facebook. Everyone has a Twitter. Everyone has an Instagram. Everyone has a TikTok. Literally all 4 of those. You'd think that every person on the surface of the planet could just deal with one, but no, we all have all 4. And we all are constantly performing for one another all the time. And we're all constantly forced to think about what we look like, what our brand is, what are we willing to do to get more clicks? It's this insatiable hunger for more. And, I don't think that that's necessarily something that's positive for our culture. I don't think it's cancerous in any significant way than, generations past had to deal with the sloth inducing television set, or, the introduction of radio presented its own issues. Like, I think humanity has to grapple with these things at the rate that it grapples with them at. But unfortunately, I think the internet does present significantly faster questions. You know,
Right.
like we're constantly being bombarded with new and potentially unhealthy conundrums. And so that was kind of what we were, you know, when Nicole and I were developing the book, that's kind of what we were interested in, is like, how do these things play out in a way that is a compelling narrative, but also asks questions. Like, we really wanted to make something that would provoke, hopefully, thought, you know, not just be like, this is the moral, but you
right.
know, hopefully draw the reader into a conversation and a dialogue, and really make them question how the themes of the book resonate with their own life. Hopefully. Right. I mean, that's the goal, right? But, you know, who knows?
That's a great point, because you in here, you ask the questions, but you don't provide any judgments. You don't make any judgments at the same time.
Yeah. Like I guess the closest thing the book has to an antagonist, Stanley, is this character who, you know, it seems like he's probably, it's not nailed down, but it seems like he's probably someone from an affluent background who has this hunger to express himself, and who has struggled with that, and is attempting by any means necessary to make a mark artistically. And I think that there's something very compelling and understandable and empathetic about that. The issue is the way that he's doing it is maybe not all that above board. But it also asks, that's the same question. How far are you willing to go? For this guy, he's willing to go significantly further than everyone else. Maybe that's an admirable trait. It's probably not, though.
Right. And there was a line, I think it was in the back of the book, where you said something along the lines where there's like that I'm trying to paraphrase of what you said, but it was basically saying that, where do you have that line between doing art and then making it commercially viable at the same time?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that is something that I struggle with a lot. You know, like my tastes are probably a little bit further on the avant-garde spectrum. I like experimental novels. I like weird experimental films. I like underground cult cinema. And just, you know, people who are very committed to themselves, you know, sometimes to a detrimental degree. You know, like one of my favorite people ever is Werner Herzog, and I'm obsessed with Henry Darger. And I mean, that guy is, if anybody doesn't know who Henry Darger is, you should please go look him up. There's a documentary about him called like The Kingdom of the Untamed or something.
Something, yeah, about the two girls. Was it that sisters and that?
Yeah,
he had thousands and thousands of pages of stories and art.
Yeah, he wrote a 30,000 word novel. It took him like 25 years. Yeah, and that's just all he did every day was work on that novel, and he became obsessed with drawing these little girls. He's an outsider artist who fought in World War One. I think he fought in World War One, and he suffered a head injury, and it kind of impacted the rest of his life, and that he became an obsessive. He became a devout Catholic. He would go to school, go to church every day. He was we don't know, but we think he was abused as a child, and he was obsessed with protecting the innocent. Right. Like a religious calling of protecting innocence. So what he would do is he was a janitor during the day, and at night he would go to a print shop, and he would spend like his whole weekly salary as this janitor to enlarge drawings and illustrations from children's books so that he could take them home and trace them on his window. And so he would make all of these elaborate 15, 20, 25 foot long drawings that were illustrations for this novel that he was writing, which has, you know, this bizarre title. I think it's like the story of the St. Elroy sisters in the land of the untamed, as told to Henry Darger, their good friend and confidant, or something like that. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. And I feel like that guy quite often, honestly. I'm like, no one cares about this. Does anybody want to read this? No. all right, well, I'm just going to spend years of my life making it anyway.
So talk to us a bit about when you put this book together with that, putting on the hat of like, we have a lot of people who are authors and who are working and writing comics and stuff like that. You had the benefit of working with Nicole previously as well. So how much of that banter relationship that you had with her, because the two of you kind of come with this idea when you're overseas, I think in Europe, you guys were coming up with the idea almost 5 years ago, correct?
Yeah. Isn't that depressing? Yeah, basically the history with Nicole is that, my goal is that we're going to end up being on that Mount Rushmore of comics. It's going to be Jack Kirby, Grant Morrison, and Frank Quitely as one head, just like merged. Steve Ditko, and then Nicole and I as one head merged. But that was a joke. I'm not egotistical. I don't think that. But basically, we've been working together for a long time now. We've made, I think, 5 books. I'm not. Suicide Forest, F Off Squad. I'm trying not to swear. I don't know what to call it.
Action Hospital,
and then the Dark Knight and Watchmen parody books that we did, Murders, and This Is Not a Girl Gang. So 7 books. We've done 7 projects together prior to this one, and we had started this right after her. Right after we had finished and published F Off Squad with Silver Sprocket, which is a great punk independent publisher. If anybody isn't aware, definitely go look their works up. They publish great books like Catboy by Benji Nate and Please Destroy the Internet by Mike Sweater. And so we had published that book through them, and it had done well, and we were excited about it, and we were like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next vista? What's the next horizon? Right. And we were both interested in a lot of these performance art people that had been kind of cropping up online. People like Dalvika and Please Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, and Poppy and Belle Delphine. And we were kind of like, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something about like the way that the internet warps people, and how the internet forces people to confront the thing that they're kind of most preoccupied with avoiding.
Right.
And so Nicole started doing these drawings, and the book kind of grew organically out of those drawings. It was like, oh, there's definitely something here. And then slowly over time, we started doing it. I wrote it over, basically we developed it over a trip. We had gone to Leeds in England, went to the convention, and then just hung out in Europe for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks. And then over that, you spend a lot of time when you're just like bumming around with nothing to do.
Yeah.
Going to museums and then eating food, and then walking around in parks and then eating food. When you could remember restaurants? Those are cool.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I haven't been in one in like 2 years, man. I don't even know if they exist anymore. But basically, we did that thing. We kind of developed it over that trip, and we really kind of discussed what the broader themes would be and how the book would be made. And then when we got back, I spent probably 3 or 4 months writing it. Then she started illustrating it. And then in the middle, we probably had like 60 or 70 pages. Then she booked the Batgirl job, where she started drawing Shadow of the Batgirl for DC Comics, their original graphic novel in their YA line that Sarah Kuhn wrote. And then after she finished that, came back, finished the book, pitched it to Dark Horse. They were like, it's not a Hellboy, but all right, we'll do it. And then, finished the book, and now it's out, which is really, really, really cool, really rewarding.
So we had Jennifer Roberts was asking, at what age range would be good for this graphic novel? I'm a teacher and constantly looking for great new material.
I would say the book has some swearing in it, and there's one shot where you see somebody's boobs, but it's not like sexy boobs. It's like sitting in a tub drinking wine and crying boobs. So I don't know, 14, 15, somewhere in there, I think is probably appropriate. It's probably an edgy 14-year-old would probably be like, this is my favorite shit ever.
And so when you put that book together, how much, because I mean, you've worked with other illustrators before. You do some amazing art as well.
Thank you.
And so, check out Dave's YouTube channel. I saw some of your stuff you did in 2017 where you're holding up some of your pictures for, I think it was Action Hospital. I think it was.
Yeah, I drew 3 volumes of a graphic novel series called Action Hospital, which is kind of a it's a book about a place that services otherworldly beings or people with extreme needs. So it's kind of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind meets Men in Black or something, set in a hospital where there's like this large cast of doctors and nurses and stuff, and then all of these weird patients, like a shark clone hybrid of Abraham Lincoln, or the first Black Pope of Nigeria. All of these kind of like interesting idiosyncratic archetypes kind of come in and out of the hospital. And so I wrote it all, and I drew half of volume 1, all of volume 2, and I penciled all of volume 3, which was inked by Erwin Papa.
So when you sat down with Nicole, you guys are working on this, and so how is that different working with an artist that you have a good relationship with compared to someone that kind of that you more of a professional relationship with? How much did you say that they show show the sketches for this? It's like, actually kind of make it like this, or did you two? How did that work? How did that relationship work between writer and artist?
Yeah, I mean, for Nicole and I, it's very symbiotic. She's the Eddie Brock, I'm the symbiote, and no, I'm joking. It's very organic. It's a very kind of, I even said, like, it started with her drawings. Like it always kind of starts that way. It starts with something visual that we both kind of vibe with. And I also just know the type of stuff she likes to draw now because we've been working for so long. Like,
right.
We always joke that there are Nicole Goose, sad girl blowing in the hair, wind blowing in the hair moments, where it's just like you got to have at least 1 or 2 big somber moments where there's a girl staring off into space with the wind blowing through the hair. You got to do that because that's like Nicole's. That's her
brand.
Guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so, like, how they say the equivalent of a guitar solo for an artist is their hand, the way they draw hands. No, the way Nicole draws sad girls crying and or hair blowing in their wind, that is her guitar solo for sure. So it varies from person to person. Nicole is very involved in the story. Our process basically is, when we're developing something together, we talk about it a lot, and we go to this park by her house and play catch, and I think just that habitual throwing a baseball back and forth while discussing things kind of helps both of us figure out what it needs to be. Just it turns off the body and allows you to access a deeper, more subconscious place of your brain or something. And then
I was going to say, so how much of that too is like, because I remember when the two of you were talking about, especially like the some of those scenes where where Becca says everyone is Tulip, and I know, like, when you and Nicole were talking about it, she just kind of drew up all the designs. Did you just say, hey, just come up with it, just do?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I think in the script it just says 9-panel grid of Tulip saying everyone is Tulip, panel 1, and then the dialogue box just says Tulip, everyone is Tulip. Okay. Like that's some of the pages are very concretely described and delineated, right. But this stuff we had just talked about, like, this is what it would be. Like, so she just knew, like, oh yeah, we've already talked about it. It's just like weird, kooky outfits. Let me go look at Japanese fashion and couture fashion, and some of these are directly inspired by some YouTubers that do this type of work.
Right. And did you, with that said, how much of, because I remember one thing you also talked about is some of the layout stuff. That how tight were you with that by saying, no, Nicole, I can't, this is my vision of this, or how much of this did you say as a writer that you wanted to?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 50-50. I would say half of the pages are very clearly like, this is a 9-panel grid. Panels 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are all cell phones.
Right.
you need to stay. But she already knows that, though. Like, she already knows that mechanic needs to be the cell phones make an X, so you're rhythmically toggling between cell phone and real person, and kind of switching back and forth between an interior perspective where you're looking at the phone and an exterior perspective where you're looking at the person looking at the phone.
Right.
And then some of them, like, yeah, see, that's a perfect example where, you know, it's not like she's drawing the hand, but there's a theatricality, a kind of extra narrative device that you just know that she's looking at her cell phone, you know?
Right.
And so, you know, that was something that we had talked about in depth at length that came, you know, we're both very interested in the formal language of comics. We're both very interested in the mechanisms of words and pictures and how they can be puzzled together to achieve various effects. Decompression, compression, asymmetrical design, symmetrical design, whether the double page spread is talking to itself or whether each page is an individual composition. You know, those are all ideas that Nicole and I are, for better or for worse, haunted by.
So do you have, so this is not just another writing question. At what point or you know, at what point do you use real life companies and logos, and when do you and then when do you for flair create fictionalized organizations or companies?
Well, the answer to that is for us and this book specifically, we are going to continue doing real Instagram posts until Instagram and Facebook call us and go, "Hey guys, we own it." So no. But we felt like it was, you know, we because we have a lot of fake businesses in the book. Like Becca very easily could have worked at McDonald's, but it's just funnier to us that McDonald's doesn't exist in our universe. It's Shiver Me Burgers is like the dominant West Coast chain. Because it's funny to think about like a pirate burger joint like really like dominating. It's just so silly. But in terms of this, we kind of felt like with it being actually Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, it made it rooted in a specific time a little bit more. It made it feel a little bit more grounded. It wasn't like blimp blomp, the social medias, you know, like I just feel, I mean, I think it totally could have worked if it was, you know, instead of Twitter, if it was twats, and instead of Facebook, it was like Nosebook, and instead of Instagram, it would be a Pictureville or something. I don't know. Like that totally could have happened, but I don't know. That was just a thing that we just decided of like, it's in the real world. It's happening right now. It's a snapshot of what these people are doing. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And because you did mention earlier too about there was a few Easter eggs that you and Nicole threw, and one was obviously the Shiver Me Burgers, and also one of the costumes that you always had to put. Do you always have to throw in a little Star Trek Easter egg? And
oh man, yeah, got to, baby, got to. Like, I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, and actually before, because Nicole and I worked on a Star Trek story together. It was a short story in Star Trek Waypoint #1. And then since then, I've written a Star Trek miniseries, Seven's Reckoning, available now wherever comic books are sold. And and so we're both just like huge Star Trek nerds. We actually, whenever we take trips, like road trips and whatnot, we always we have this thing. It's so dorky. It's called The Game. And basically one of us says, "All right, I got it." And then the other one has to go, "All right, is it a Federation person? Nope. Are they part of the Klingon Empire? Yep. Is it Kern? Nope. Is it? And basically we play 20 questions with Star Trek stuff. Because I don't know, man. It's our common language. I love Star Trek, and so does Nicole.
And this is that diamond frame.
Oh yeah, the diamond frame. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And we specifically like this one also because this one happens in the beginning of the book. So as the book progresses, the phones get more claustrophobic and more claustrophobic. And this one is claustrophobic, as you can see. Becca's framed by the phone diamond where she's in the middle on it. but it starts out with her not being, she's like choosing to, metaphorically in air quotes, choosing to go into the phone, where it's a shot of her and then the phone, her and then the phone, her and then the phone, as opposed to the X shape, where it really feels a little bit more less of a choice. It's more she's in this system, the phones are there, they create this narrative rhythm where you're toggling back and forth between an interior and an exterior.
Right. And so my other question for you is, when do you use an editor at this time? What is it, when you just have the script or is it when you have the layouts out, because I know when you're mentioning before in a previous interview, when it came with the Dark Horse, at what point do they have to come in and kind of look at that from that editing perspective?
So for this book, Connor, our editor, was great, very supportive, gave lots of, he was a champion for the book. The book would not have gotten published without him. And obviously he liked it and gave it the thumbs up, but he had more editorial input after the book was done, when we were kind of all massaging, like, what do the end papers look like? What does the end essay look like? Where are we going to put the chapter breaks? How do we want the chapter breaks to look? And then he was very helpful in that process of kind of navigating that side of things. But in terms of fingers in the pot on this specific project, the train had already left the station. We were already making the book. They kind of just picked the book up and were like, we'll publish it. Since then, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but whatever, I'm going to say it. I've signed another book to Dark Horse, and that one has been started from scratch. We didn't have like 100 pages of it when we went to them. And
the Forest Hills Bootleg Society?
That one is actually, no, that is going to be published by Simon Schuster next summer.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, this one hasn't been announced yet, but the next Dark Horse book I'm doing is Connor's very involved. He looked at the scripts early on and was kind of like, oh, I think we should tweak this, or, I have a personal experience that relates to that. Have you thought about framing it in this way? And he's very intelligent, and it was a really, there's some editors that comics is very small, and people become editors because they're just like the guy that's standing there. And Connor is not one of those people, thankfully. He's very, he understands comics, and he also understands the fine balance of knowing when to push someone to do better and knowing when to be like, all right, that's your vision. Do what thou wilt.
And as starting out as like an indie comic creator, how much of a climb was it for you to take that feedback from an editor?
It's a good question. I think honestly the learning curve wasn't that steep, just because I went to art school. I'm used to critique, and honestly, I wish. And I work, my day job is I work at a media company as a writer producer, so I'm constantly having to give notes and get notes on videos I produce or write or whatever. And so taking notes doesn't bother me. Dealing with people who give bad notes bothers me. You know what I mean? And thankfully, my experience in comics has been very positive, and I haven't had to deal with a lot of that. My experience in other avenues, not so much. But I think that's probably because everybody in comics wants to be here. Everyone in comics just wants the projects to be as good as possible, because it's so hard to get anything going. I think that the editor and the design people, letterers, colorists, everybody that's kind of in a position that's not a glory position, even though writing and drawing comics is like not something that most people think is cool. Those positions are vital, because those people can make or break a book. Like, I've drawn books before that have had people who were not as skilled as I am, and it just tanked the project. Like, it was just like, wow, you can't even see the artwork because these colors are so bad, or the lettering is so bad, or they're both so bad, or the inks are so bad. Like, it's kind of one of those things where I don't think a lot of comic book readers really understand like how precarious that apple cart is, and if like one person in it doesn't give a shit, it just like topples over.
Right. And so, and you mentioned too, and like I wrote this down because I think this is a great writing tip that you had in a previous interview. You said, enter a scene late and leave early.
Yeah, full disclosure, that is not something I came up with. I think that's like a David Mamet quote. Like, that's not me. But I think it is a truism. I fully think it is a truism. And like, that's the thing I see so often in self-published works. People are making their first things. They're starting, they're learning, they're figuring it out, is that they're so in love with their characters that they just want to see their characters just hang out and talk and, you know, not have conflict and just kind of be friends, because they are friends in their minds with their characters. And so that kind of makes this very strange, like almost like you're making fanfic of your own thing midway making your own thing. It's really strange. It's a very strange thing, and it happens more than you'd think. Like, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but I can think of like some major releases like this year that like completely did that. And I just really wish somebody would have been like, guys, I feel like conflict is the nature, you know, the origin point of all narrative. So like, where's the conflict in any of these scenes? This is just like people in a room.
Just hanging out, yeah.
And I love people in a room hanging out. Like, F-Off Squad is like completely that.
Right.
But also there's like inner turmoil and people, you know, unrequited love, and you can have your sad, quiet drama cake and eat it too, you know?
Right. And so, is there other advice that you would give to comic book writers or authors in general? Do you have like any like post-it notes on your, or something behind your computer that say, "Oh, I'm going to look up and I'm going to remember that"? Do you have any of those quotes or truisms that you keep on?
Oh yeah, I think the main one though is like start small. You know, like I think everybody when they first start making comics or really any kind of art form, you know, you want to run, you want to make your giant mural, you want to make your 20 by 20 painting, you want to make your Guernica, you know, you really want to be seen as an artist. You don't want to spend 20 years making a name for yourself and learning your craft. That fucking sucks. Can't I just have the recognition now?
Right. Everybody wants to make the story of Vivian Girls in what is known as the realms of the unreal of Glandeco, Angelini, and Warstorm, right? Is that what you're saying?
That is 100% the title. Yeah, but I think honestly, like self-publishing, starting small, making mini comics, like 8-page comics, you will learn so much so quickly, and you'll figure out so much so quickly. And the other thing I would say is like, you know, maybe don't make comics that just are aspiring to be movies.
Right. And because you've worked in past with like anthologies, do you recommend?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think anthologies are a great way to get started. It's a great way to kind of dip your feet in, figure out what you like, what you don't like, figure out if you like working with other people or if you don't. Yeah, I think anthologies are awesome. I've been in a bunch of them. I've published a bunch. Like, I think they're an invaluable component of the comics landscape that is unfortunately criminally undervalued by the broader direct market at large. You know, I mean, they're huge on Kickstarter. You know, these anthologies make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they can't sell like 5,000 copies in the direct market because for whatever reason, comic book readers have been conditioned to think that they don't like anthologies.
Right. I mean, there's been some, as you said, there's been some fantastic anthologies out there, and it's like going to like a store that you're able to get like 20 stories in one. So
yeah, it's the hometown buffet of sequential art, right? That's the thing people say, right?
Right. Yeah. If not, they should. That's
yeah, totally.
And so with that said, how did at what point did you decide also to bring in as well? Is it because Nicole did the writing and then she did the lettering as well, and then the colorist. Was that a colorist that Ellie Ellie Hill? Did you know her, or is that someone that you
basically Nicole and I, I mean, I guess you could say we have a little bit of a following here in the LA area. You know, this is back when we were kind of more predominantly self-publishing, because this was a couple years ago, and so we went and we did a lecture at a local art college, and because we knew the. Also, I feel like I'm melting. It's so hot in my apartment right now. We knew the instructor of this class. It was a comics history class and a comics kind of the very rare point where comics gets featured in academia. And so this professor was like, "Hey, I've seen you guys around at conventions and stuff. You seem like you're really in it to win it and hustling. Like, do you want to give a talk to my students to kind of tell them what it's like in the trenches and kind of give them tips or tricks or something?"
Right.
And we were both like, yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be cool. So we did this talk at the art center. Maybe it wasn't the art center. I think it was the art center. I don't remember. It's either the art center or Pasadena College of Art and Design, one of the two. And so we did this talk, you know, we did a little I did a little song and dance about like, the history of comics, gangsters, blah, 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 blah. Siegel and Schuster sold Superman for $130. Don't do that, kids. And then, Stan Lee didn't do shit. Jack Kirby did everything. So we did our song and dance routine, and Nicole talked about our work and what goes into it and the process that we make it by. And then, we started taking questions, and one of the students there was just like super engaged, really excited about stuff, really inquisitive, very curious person. And they came up to us afterwards and introduced themselves. They actually bought some comics from us, I think. And then afterwards, Nicole like looked them up and was like, "Wow, this Ellie Hall person is like really good. Like, look at these paintings. Like, she's studying to be a background painter for animation, but like, I don't know. I think she could probably color Tulip. What do you think?" And I was like, "Wow, they're really good. Yeah, let's give it a shot." And so she colored Tulip, over the course of, I really don't even know, 70 years. She colored Tulip over she's an 80-year-old woman now. Yeah. I look good, but I'm actually 103 right now. I don't know if you know that. But yeah, I mean, look at that palette. Like, that palette is so nice. The contour shading and drop shadows add so much weight. The kind of the warmth of that pastel, so cool. Yeah, Ellie did a great job. She really breathed a new dimension into the pages. I'm eternally grateful for her.
Yeah, I gotta say too, like we were talking earlier, this is a fantastic graphic novel. I think you said 160 pages or so. It's close to, I think, with your intro and outro that you've put into it. It's like 180 pages.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think the graphic novel version is like 184 pages, maybe. I'm not sure. Right. But yeah, I'm very pleased with it. I'm very proud of it. I feel like, look, man, you put your all into every book, and sometimes they connect with like 7 people, and sometimes they connect with 70 people. So hopefully this one is 70.
Right. And what was the decision on that? Because this itself is kind of a group effort, just from a marketing perspective. Do you think so? Yeah. So when you went and you talked to the students, do you feel as though that it's important you think art schools now should be teaching art students like financial management and marketing? Should those be classes that need to be taken now?
I mean, honestly, art schools in general are kind of a joke, man. Like, you can learn everything you need to learn on YouTube. That might not help you with job security, but you'll definitely be able to gain the skills if you want it. I think that's the thing with any creative industry. It's really just about how far are you willing to go? How stubborn are you? Are you willing to go through a decade of nobody giving a shit?
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do that, look, life is long. There are many ways to derive meaning. I don't know that everyone is cut out for life as a professionally creative person. Right. I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I'm just trying to speak what my experience has been, which was literally a decade of nobody caring at all. And now that's sort of starting to evolve, hopefully, maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Right. And yeah, I was going to say too, is like, so from the marketing perspective, was it explicit to have Everyone Is Tulip as a separate website because of that, or is there a reason why you didn't want to have it on your primary?
Like my personal website? Yeah, I just felt like it. Well, one, it would help it rank for search engine optimization.
Okay.
Two, it would just make it feel bigger, it would make it feel like its own thing. And three, I don't know, it felt better that way, as opposed to just like, we're just gonna throw it up on my website. I don't know.
Right.
Just felt like more of a statement of like, it's a piece of art and it's gonna live here. And if you want to read it here, that's great. If you want to buy it as a book, you can do that too.
Right. And if you had so before, I want to just let everybody know too. So if you have a chance, it's like, so it's everyoneistulip.com.
Yeah.
Check it out. This is where it's just all about everything about this amazing graphic novel. If you want to learn more about Dave Baker, go to heydavebaker.com, and you have all of your work on here. Some of it, and you got some swag on here. You got t-shirts, you got hats, you got all kinds of stuff on here. And I want Bob Kane was a liar.
It was true. That guy was a piece
of shit. And you had, and also I wanted to show you. Can I just plug for you real quick your deep cuts?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's talk about deep cuts, baby.
Yeah, talk about deep cuts. Tell us about your podcast here.
Yeah, so Deep Cuts is a podcast that I co-write and co-host with my friend Andrew Price, and it is a deep dive explainer into weird or obscure topics. The kind of high concept of the show is that it is a podcast where we pick a topic and then walk the listener through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty, so they can appear like an interesting and or idiosyncratic person at their next forced social function. And we've covered a whole bunch of stuff. We've covered the court case where the iconic Japanese superhero Ultraman was stolen by a Thai production company, and they built an actual Ultraman themed theme park in Thailand. We've covered the time that a North Korean dictator kidnapped the most famous South Korean, or wait, no, yeah, North Korean dictator kidnapped the most famous director in South Korea and held him against his will and forced him to make 6 movies over 12 years.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. We did a full-on musical episode where we did a 2-hour musical with 11 original songs written by Andrew and performed by both of us about the history of the file sharing service Napster, that basically brought the music industry to its knees in the early 2000s. So we've done a really, a wide swath of bizarre topics that I think are really cool, but don't get enough love in the broader kind of discourse, as it were.
That's awesome. And so what's your turnaround time? Because this is now, but the good news about this isn't kind of time sensitive stuff. So you put a lot of production in this stuff.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how much effort we put into it. Honestly, like it's it's too much effort. We did like a 4-hour episode on how Andrew WK may or may not be a fictional character, and the show's been going for almost 2 years now. I think we've got like 75 episodes.
Right, I saw that.
So and it's fully written. Like, it's not just us getting together and bullshitting while drinking beers. Like, it's like full NPR style narration with music playing underneath it. And we also have like the like conceit of the show is that this is a podcast that Andrew and I host while we are in our off time, because we secretly run a boy detective agency called the Mystery Treehouse Investigation Agency. So like sometimes there's extended, periods where it's in universe, in air quotes. So there's like radio play episodes where there's like a large ensemble cast of fictional characters and Muppets and monsters. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how come this isn't a graphic novel? There's like illustrations for this?
Yeah. We'll see. We've talked about making that. I don't know. I think that's one of those things where you're kind of like, comics is already so niche.
Right.
Is our podcast about niche stuff gonna make a good comic? I don't know. Maybe. I think it could. We would just have to kind of crack what that right story is, or kind of, have a listener base that would really respond to it. I mean, honestly, the listener base is way larger than I would ever have dreamed it to be. Like the last podcast I had, which was about making zines and DIY stuff. I mean, that shit got like 40 downloads an episode. And so the fact that this is significantly more is just like, whoa, I never dreamed that it would get this big.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So congratulations to that too. That's awesome. You're gonna get another listener now, because I love listening to this kind of stuff. So.
Oh, cool. Thank you, man. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But anyway, so Dave, I gotta say, man, I love Everyone Is Tulip. It was a great graphic novel, well put together. You can tell that it's that you and Nicole work really well together on this, and it was fun. It was good, and as I say, it's like what I loved about it is that it asks the questions but doesn't pass judgments on where we're going to be seeing things happening with social media in the the near future as well. So
yeah, that's definitely the goal. And it makes me feel good. Feels good to hear you say that. We'll see if anyone else echoes those sentiments.
I'm sure they will. Yeah. All right. Well, so thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate you having come on. And wait, when your Forest Hills Bootleg Society or your other ones come out, come back on. I had a great time talking with you.
Yeah. I mean, dang it. I mean, yeah, that sounds great. I'm so sorry. I made it to the last question. Marty, what did I do?
I'll just add that little timestamp on there. I'll just add it. That's fine.
I'm so sorry. I made it literally to the last question. I'm so sorry. I was really trying. I even said F off squad.
Yeah. You did good. You did well. You held yourself tight. Good job, Dave. All right, I'll chat with and yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. This has been a genuine pleasure.
Yeah.
And are those boxed?
Over here? Yeah, this is a Marvel Legends The Thing variant where he's in the hat and the coat, and then Jim Lee Batman and Hush, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that McFarlane Toys? No,
that was DC Direct that put those out. Like honestly, I just dug those. Oh man, it's so hard. I just dug those out from my parents' house in Arizona. They were in a box, and I was like, "What? I have these? I don't even remember this. This is great. Free toys." Because I'm normally not the type of person that like keeps stuff in the box. Right. Like I have like on my writing desk where I'm doing this, I have all these like Star Trek figures that are like just not they're not worth anything to anybody except me, but I definitely bought them all in the package because I wanted good condition Tuvok toys, I really needed that Tim Russ likeness to be unchipped.
Yeah, I remember like in the 90s buying things like, oh, this is going to be a collector's item one day. And like me and like 500,000 other people thought that too. So it's like, it's still like, almost 30 years later, they're still not worth much.
No. And honestly, that's the kind of stuff that I love, though. Like, I love schlocky, kind of mass-produced toy bullshit. Like, I don't even remember this guy's name, but over my drawing, yes, I got this guy. He's the dude from A New Hope who's like in the bar and he's like drinking a little. He's like, and he's like
the
drinking.
Little bat thing, yeah.
The little bat guy, yeah. I just love his design, and I buy whenever I see figures of this guy, which there aren't many. I always buy them because I'm like, that weird little bat dude. That guy rules.
He's literally like a Batman.
Literally a Batman. Yeah. Mm-hmm.